Hello everyone. This is GarageBand assignment number 4 and the final assignment before your final project is due. And this is really my favorite project of the entire semester. It really requires that you demonstrate some proficiency in very useful skills, but more importantly, it's an opportunity to really show off your creativity in music. So basically, what the assignment is you're going to take a song that I own the rights to, so that we can avoid copyright infringement, anything like that. Earlier in the semester, I told you about the young woman that I used to work with, Marissa Grace, and this was a song that she and I worked on together. And what you'll be doing is you're going to be taking the vocal tracks from our original demo, and you're basically, it's kind of a remix, but really it's an orchestration and arrangement project. What you're going to do is take those basic vocal tracks and you're going to write a song around those vocal tracks, and there are certain parameters you have to follow. So this over here is the email that I sent out along with this video, but let's just go through here and talk about it. So the vocal tracks are actually 7 individual MP3 files that I've sent you. Now, on the original demo, there weren't 7 vocal tracks, there were actually 11 vocal tracks, but 4 of them were harmonies. And part of this assignment for you is to write and record your own harmonies. So I took the harmonies out and I only gave you the main tracks. They are, quote, naked, meaning that all of the effects that I've had put on them have been removed. So it's really up to you what you want to do with these new songs. So the first thing you'll do is you'll open up a new project and you'll change the parameters to fit this. You want it to be 4/4 in B minor at 90 beats per minute. So I'm going to actually do this as I talk through it. So double click on your empty project. Let's see, again, this one for what we start on, we're going to actually use a lot of these. So I'll just click on this one for now. Alright, so the tempo needs to be 90 beats per minute. The key is in B minor and 4/4. That looks good. Alright, so enter to set that. Now let's bring that down there for now. Okay, moving forward. So for this project, you must have, in addition to the vocal tracks that you'll bring in and import, the 7 of those, you have to come up with at least 6 MIDI tracks. Now for MIDI, it doesn't have to necessarily, I think a lot of people think of MIDI and they think of a synthesizer, and that's certainly one type of instrument that you can use MIDI for, but MIDI can also be various types of pianos, harpsichords, just really any general keyboard instrument. Bowed string instruments like a string section, horns, winds, different types of guitars, world instruments like a sitar, an oud, percussion, Latin percussion, African percussion, Eastern Asian percussion. MIDI can be absolutely anything. So as you approach this song, you can really kind of go for any genre you want to. If you want to make it a bluegrass song, you can use MIDI for banjo and fiddle and bass and a jug, and you can get all those different instruments. So you can do absolutely anything with this. When you see MIDI, that just means 6 instruments that you're recording using the keyboard rather than having a person come and actually play those instruments with a microphone. You have to write and record 3 vocal harmonies. So that doesn't have to be throughout the song. It could be, for example, the verse could have 1 harmony that you throw, and it doesn't have to be the whole verse. It could just be certain words, certain phrases, anything like that. And then the chorus can have a harmony, or maybe you can have a 2-part harmony or 3-part harmony. You can split that up however you want. It can be as short as a couple notes on a phrase. It's very open for that. But what you do have to do is record your 3 different vocal harmonies where you are the singer. And then you have to put a plug-in on each of those tracks. So a plug-in, let me show you what that is. Well, first we need an audio track to demonstrate what a plugin is, because plugins aren't used for MIDI. So I'm going to click on that and bring this in. So a plugin, another way to think about it is like a sound effect. So once I go over here and click on voice, these are all plugins. Each one of these is going to sound a little bit different. These are all intended to be from natural up, pretty normal that you would hear in a song. Some of them are more dramatic than others. These ones are kind of cool effects, and then of course experimental gets pretty. These ones are really kind of silly, but it is possible that you could find one of those that you think works for the song well. So those are plugins. So you would just choose one. And if you wanted, like, let's say you liked compressed vocal, but it wasn't quite perfect, you would double click on this icon here, and then you can change the parameters here. You want a little bit more or less reverb. You want a boost or compression, and you can look up. You can either email me and ask what these effects mean. There are just so many effects. We unfortunately don't have time to cover all of them in this course. That's a little bit outside of the scope of the course. But if you had specific questions, I'm happy to answer those for you. Either email me or you can look them up. That might be, easier for you. And then EQ, you could boost or reduce certain frequency ranges. This is something you probably won't need to do, although you may experiment with that and find that it's useful for your project. So each of those each of those harmonies need a different plugin or the same one. It's really up to you. And one thing I just want to make clear, it says it on here. So you have 3 harmonies that you're coming up with, as well as the 7 vocal tracks that you're going to drag into your project. So all 10 of those need to have a plugin on them. You're going to have your virtual drummer with a different beat for each section. So now let's actually go down here and look at song structure. So the first 4 bars are an instrumental intro that you'll write on your own. It's in B minor, whatever you want to do in B minor. And then here, measures 5 through 12, it's an intro to the song, but it's the chorus. For some of you, that may mean just the chorus as normal, or maybe there's something a little different about it. But the lyrics are the chorus, and there's 8 bars of that. Then you have your first verse. Now, the first verse and the second verse are both 8 bars, but the way I had written the song with Marissa, we left what's sometimes called a dead measure in there, where we have an extra measure on the first verse. You have to work around that, but you can have music continue, or you can just have blank space somewhere in those 9 bars or at the end. So 9 or 8 plus 1, however you want to think about that. Then there's a pre-chorus, 4 bars followed by a chorus, which is another 4 bars. So basically the sections you have here, if you don't count the intro, because the intro is whatever you want it to be, there are verses, pre-choruses, and choruses. So really you just have to come up with 3 different sections. So one way you could interpret this part about the virtual drummer is I'm going to have 1 beat for the verse, a different beat for the pre-chorus, and a 3rd beat for the chorus. You may do something completely different. You may have each of your choruses be different. But that's what it means. It means you can't just have 1 beat that you drag and create through the whole thing. When you're working with a virtual drummer, if you want to add a fill into a spot, one thing you can do, and I'll show you how to do this right now. So I'm going to bring in my virtual drummer. So let's say I wanted to have a fill at measure 6, which isn't, a normal place in an 8-bar phrase to have a fill. One thing I can do is at the end of where I want the fill to be, I can put a break. So this is going to be Command T for trim. So you'll notice it got a little bit busier there. Now if I play this back, there's a little fill there. If you wanted to have open space, like let's say you wanted to hit on beat 1 or something, what you would do is you would grab the bottom right corner and you would just drag it so that it stops at beat 1, and then you're going to have 3 beats of no sound. So let's listen to how that sounds. Something like that. Now, Des is under the hip-hop section. If you want something more acoustic sounding, because those are all electronic drums that have been processed, a lot of it's MIDI based. If you want something that sounds more like an acoustic drum set, Kyle is the default. I'm trying to remember, I think half pipe might be the one it starts with. So now that we switched it to that, let's hear how this sounds different with Kyle. Again, we just want to hit on beat 1. And it comes back in. that trimming technique where you push Command T, that's also how you'll get different sections. So you can only have one virtual drummer in a project, but if I have, let's say verse 12 is where the chorus comes in, I would just do Command T, well, highlight it by clicking on it, and then Command T, and then I can click on this one and change it to a different drummer or a different beat, or I can just move this around, or I can change which drums are being used, and it only affects this one. Then once I have the verse the way I want it, I can just drag this to make the appropriate length, and then copy and paste it, or and then move that to wherever the other verses are. Okay, looking back to this. The project must be mixed. So mixed means dynamically balanced. So you'll get all of your tracks in here. They will all be recorded. And you'll notice that even though these are three different types of tracks, this first one is MIDI, this one is audio, and this one is virtual drummer, they all have this bar here. So this is your volume. And when you click on it, you have these numbers. So dB is decibel, it's a unit of measuring volume. Everything's going to start out at 0, but you can click and drag that down really low, down to negative infinity, and it goes to roughly 60 or 100. It goes up to minus 100 decibels, and then plus 6 decibels. So if a decibel is a unit of measurement, how can you have a negative unit? Like, how can you add negative half a cup of flour to a cake batter, right? You don't just take flour out of it. What that means when it says negative or plus positive, it just means whatever the normal decibel rating when you record it, this either adds decibels or removes them. I believe, you can also double click that and just type in a number if you know a specific number you want. I'm just going to click on 0 though for that one. So what you'll do is you'll go through the track and you will just say, okay, well, the vocals should be on top and the drums are a little loud, so let's put the drums down here and the piano should be about here, and you'll just balance it that way. Well, that begs the question, well, what if I want the volume to be different? What if I want the drums louder on the chorus than the verse? Well, with most types of tracks, with audio and MIDI at least, you could just have a second one. So I've got a classic electric piano. Let's say I wanted the same timbre, the same instrument, but different sounds or different volume for different parts of the song. So I can just come up to track with duplicate settings, and now I have two of the same one, and I can just Command T and trim it and click and drag it down here, and then I can have this one be quiet, but this one can be a little bit louder. That's one way to do it. There is another way though. So the other way would use what's called automation. Automation is when the song corrects itself or it changes during the song. If you imagine an actual recording studio, like a physical space with a soundboard in front of you, and you have those faders which control the volume, imagine looking at the faders while a song's playing back and they're kind of moving on their own. That's where the term automation comes from. You're automating when it will move. Now, we're not using a physical board here, but it's still the same idea. So this symbol here is called automation, and you click on this one, and now when you click on it, you have this line here. And every time I click on it, I click on the line, well, after the first one, you get these points. So now what the points do is I can adjust the volume. So I could have started with that there, right? Wherever you want to get your bass volume first. Bass as in B-A-S-E, not B-A-S-S. And then with these dots, you can drag them, and it tells you exactly where the measure is and exactly what the decibel rating is. So you can say, okay, well, this one's going to be quiet, but then here it gets nice and loud. So let's say I wanted measure 14 to be louder. I wouldn't just do 2 dots, because if I did 2, then it does that, whereas that's not really what I wanted. That would sound like a big crescendo into 14, and I want something more abrupt. So what I would do is I would put actually 4 dots, and then I can move that up. So just measure 14 is a little bit louder. And if you look at the requirements, you do need to have at least 3 tracks have to be automated. Now, volume is probably the most common thing that people automate, but it's not the only thing. All these different effects can be automated. Echo, reverb. So echo is like a delay. Echo, echo, echo. Whereas reverb is the size of the room that you're in. If you have a lot of reverb, it sounds like you're in a giant cathedral. Whereas if you have no reverb, it sounds like you're in a practice room. So that's what reverb is. Echo is just a delay. Volume is volume. Panning, and panning, that brings me back to this, because all tracks must be panned. So panning means sending something to the left or the right. So this means, or this requires rather, that the song be stereo, because you have control. Some sounds only come through the right side, some only come through the left, some come through both equally, and others have a kind of a mixture where maybe 60% of the sound comes to the right and 40% comes to the left. There are two ways you can adjust the panning. One is with this knob right here. If you click and drag, you move that to the left or to the right. And when you're adjusting for panning, you have to have headphones. I mean, you don't literally have to, but you're not really going to get the effect from just the computer speakers. It's really helpful to have headphones in so you can really hear what's going on. But the more I put this to the right, let's see, well, let me explain it this way. If this was all the way to the right, you would only hear sound from the right speaker. If this was all the way to the left, you'd only hear sound from the left speaker. And if it's at 12 o'clock, you're going to hear sound equal from both speakers. It just makes the song much more interesting to listen to if it's split up a little bit differently. So like, let's say the guitar is only on the left side, or at least, 20% more on the left, and the strings are 30% higher on the right. So generally people like to have a nice even spread. Imagine being a conductor of an orchestra, or even a choir for that matter, and you're standing in the center and you have all your musicians around you. Well, the sopranos sounds like it's coming from one side, or the French horns sound like their sound is coming from just right of center. That's what you're trying to do for someone who's listening to this, by making it so that different instruments or different voices sound like they're coming from different areas. This is an aural illusion. You're just making it sound more real. You're making it sound like they're in the room with them. However, there are certain components to a song that are really important, and those components are more often than not left in the center. The most foundational instruments in a rock setting, this would be bass and drums. So bass and drums are usually going to be left dead center because you want those to really be clear. Also, the primary melody is often center. Not always, but more often than not. And then anything else can be spread around. Now, you don't have to follow those rules. You can put the drums all the way to the left, and you can put the vocals all the way to the right, or whatever you want to do, but that's what panning is. Now, if you adjust it with this knob here, that's the whole track for the whole song. That's probably what you'll do. If you were to automate panning, that would mean like it goes back and forth, ooh, as it's happening. You see that in like in film recording, when you're watching a movie. Sometimes they'll try to make it sound like a siren, like a police car is driving by, and they'll literally pan from the right to the left. And when you're in the audience, it sounds like the police car is driving behind you from the right to the left. You probably won't do that. If you do any automation, it'll probably be volume, but please feel free to experiment with any of those other effects on there. And that's how you go between them. You just click on here and you select the one you want. Then once you have it and you don't want to edit automation for the time being anymore, you just click on that again and it goes away and looks like normal. All right, back to this. Actually, I think that's everything. As I mentioned before, this is an example for you to really be creative in a way that also tests your knowledge of GarageBand. And really, none of you, presumably, have worked with any of these features before, but this is how you get in there and learn them. Like, I could just make a test for you, or you go and you prove to me, like, okay, click on this, and you show me that you know how to do something, but you're going to gain a much more thorough understanding of this program if you're actually doing something musical to learn these skills rather than just kind of going through a checklist. The last thing that I want to show you is how to bring in the 7 vocal tracks. So what you'll do is, well, there are actually 2 ways. One is to click on this media thing right here. If you click on that, it's going to open up your iTunes. And whatever songs you have there, you can open it. So when you open this to your email, if it goes to iTunes, you can do it that way. Another way you can do it would be to just click and drag. So remember, something that you learned from your first project, when you were to drag a loop into a GarageBand project, you have to drag it into this empty space down here. The same thing is true of dragging in an MP3. So I'm just going to do all of them at once. You can do this individually, but I'm just going to click on one, Command A, so they're all there. And now I'm going to click and drag this to the bottom where there isn't anything. So those are adding. And when you drag it in, I was at kind of a weird angle with the way I had the windows open, but you want to make sure you drag it to the first measure. Now, if you didn't do it, if you did it the way I did, you can click and slide these over here. Okay, that looks good. So it's very important that before you drag anything in or before you start working on your project, you set up the tempo and the key, because this way I exported these from a different GarageBand project that was set up to 90 BPM in B minor. So now the vocals are going to come in right at measure 5. So I'm going to first delete, actually I'll just delete this whole thing. And don't forget, you do need to have a virtual drummer, but you can also add drums through MIDI, like Haven did for the GarageBand, for the Hold On I'm Coming project. Okay, so let's listen to this. If it uploaded correctly, or if it was dragged in correctly, right on this downbeat of measure 5, we should hear the vocals start. As you're working, I think it would be very helpful to use these controls up here. So let me just talk you through those again. This one right here is a looper. This calls it cycle, but loop is the more general term. Cycle is like the proprietary term specific to Apple. When you turn this on, you get this yellow bar, and you can drag this to wherever you want. So if I'm trying to figure out if I like something, I can click and make this only loop measures 9 through 12, and it's only going to play those. It's going to keep cycling through while I kind of figure out what I want to do. So that can be really helpful. This tuning fork is just a tuner. So if you have your guitar or any other instrument, you can play it, and this will tell you, this will allow you to tune it. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's your count in. Again, you can go up to, let's see, was it track? Record. You can set this to no count in, 1 bar, or 2 bar count in. And finally, the metronome. So I'm going to turn the metronome on just so that you hear that this is, and fingers crossed it worked out properly, just so you can hear that it really is coming on beat 5. The start of measure 5. So there's 4 bars of instrumental intro, and then it comes in on measure 5. But one other thing that I wanted to point out is it's critical that when you're recording audio, especially vocals, really anything, but whenever you're recording audio, you have headphones on. Otherwise, the sound of the click or the sound of any of the tracks are going to be picked up by the microphone. So always record with headphones on. Okay, so clicks on. This is the beginning. Let's listen and see if the vocals really do come in on the downbeat of measure 5. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there we go. Okay, I said last thing. I lied. This is really the last thing. I just want to remind you that this comes from a demo. This was not our official recording studio version of the song. This was just a version that we recorded so that we could figure out exactly how we wanted the song to go, and so that the musicians and the live band could learn the song, and also as sort of a template for the official recording. So we didn't hold ourselves to as high a standard for getting this vocal part perfect as we would have in like the official studio. So there are parts of this that are not really her best. Like, let's just be real. It's not like the best performance she's ever given. For example, there's one note that's just a little bit out of tune in that first part. Now, we do have auto-tune on here. I know people think of auto-tune as being like a 4-letter word, and it is. Just kidding. There's a time and place for it. I think it's helpful for singers who want to just tighten up just a little bit if they're like slightly off. If someone's singing and they're too far out of key, but you turn auto-tune on, basically what it does is it takes every frequency and it figures out which frequencies are in the key, and it defaults it to that, makes it go up or go down a little bit to fit the key. So we're in B minor, specifically B natural minor. So it's just going to default those pitches to whatever's closest. Now, if someone was really close to begin with and it bumps them up just a couple cents, then that's fine. It's going to sound better. But if they're too far apart from the notes, then it kind of sounds like T-Pain, which is cool, and maybe you like that for this specific song, or maybe you don't like that sound for this specific song. But I'm going to show you how to do that just in case you want to attempt cleaning some of this up. Although I will warn you, she does sing a leading tone every once in a while, which would be the A sharp for this key. And that's not always going to work well with auto-tune, but anyway, that's what you do. You double-click the track, the wave region. Drag this part up, and now you get limit to key. And this is how intense do you want to be. If you drag this all the way over here, it's really going to change your notes. If you want to be a little bit more subtle, you can have it over here. So just to show you how extreme it could be, I'm going to put this at measure 9, and well, actually that was for the wrong one. I'm going to put it there. Track, limit to key, turn that all the way up. So let's see. It's going to sound, like I said, kind of T-Painy.
I'll be living the life on the stage every night. Fans will sing every line when I pick up the mic.
If it wasn't for that last leading tone at the end, I kind of do like the sound of that. Anyway, I know that was a very long explanation, but there is a lot going into this one. As always, any questions, send me an email. I can meet with you, or I can create some kind of video tutorial to explain a specific issue you're having. Good luck, and I hope you have fun with this one. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your songs.